All right, how's it going, everybody? So, back today with a game analysis of a 45 plus 45 game that I played the other day in the Lichess 45-45 League. Again, these are games where each side gets 45 minutes and 45 seconds added for every move, and the games take roughly 2 to 2.5 hours to play on average. So they're good quality games generally, and yeah, just a good way to get in some longer time control practice. So in this game, I was playing Ben Ellis 3, rated 2054 in the classical pool on Lichess. My rating at the time of this game was 2048. Yeah, let's get right into it. So I went in for a London bishop f4. They went this 2c5 variation. Just sort of normal stuff here. E3 they take. I take. They go knight c6. I go knight f3, and then they pin my bishop. So here I just unpinned. As is often the case in the London, there are other things you can do as well. So notably here, c3 or knight bd2 are decent options as well. Practically speaking, yeah, they're all pretty much the same. But yeah, I went bishop e2, just unpinning. They go e3, and then I actually had a bit of an opening mistake here. So I haven't played in London in a while, and so I'm a little rusty on some of these ideas. But I played this move h3. Whoops, that is not the. I don't know why that came up. I clicked on the wrong thing over here, I guess. But yeah, I played this move h3, which seems innocuous enough. So I think it was a case of, you're just playing something like the London where you feel like you can't really mess up that much in the first 5 to 10 moves, and anything that looks reasonable, you should be able to play it. But yeah, this is not one where that's actually true. So I mentioned on the last move, this move c3 or knight bd2 were good options, and they're good options because each one of those reinforces d4 in some way. So c3, of course, directly reinforces d4, and knight bd2 reinforces d4 insofar as if this knight is ever captured, you can just recapture with the knight, which will be defending d4. But yeah, I was just sort of going through the moves kind of quickly here, and luckily my opponent made an inaccuracy. Instead here, they should have tried to get after this d4 pawn in the following way. So take out the defender, one of the two defenders, my knight and queen. I recapture, and then they come in here with this double attack. There's really nothing better for white than just to continue with their developments. And so black can come in and take the pawn, and you get some kind of line like this, and white is just down a pawn with no real compensation. So my opponent, also playing probably relatively quickly, I think, didn't take all of that into account, and let me off the hook. Instead of capturing here, they just did the stereotypical bishop retreat. And I reinforced d4 at this point, and there's no longer any issues. I think initially on the move where I did this h3 idea, I might have been a little hesitant to go into this kind of structure, this so-called Carlsbad pawn structure in reverse. I think it's reverse because I think it usually happens the other way with the Queen's Gambit decline. But because I didn't want to have them sort of having these stereotypical plans of just coming and attacking, but I don't know why I was like, I don't want that. It's just something that gets played. Sometimes we get these ghosts in our head where we're like, if my opponent has an easy plan, maybe I don't want to let him go for that. And there's nothing wrong with being on the white side of a pawn minority pawn storm. It's just something you have to play against. So yeah, good practical takeaway there of just not trying to see ghosts when you can. So yeah, anyway, had this move c3. Let me try to get rid of some of these arrows here. c3, they went bishop d6, and I just captured. So knight e5 was another plausible move here. I think the computer also suggests queen c1, just reinforcing here. That this move seems a little weird though, you know, especially possibly imagining the c file coming open. I'm always hesitant to put my queen on that file, but knight e5 especially was a decent option. One thing I have noticed, if you look at a lot of different instructional whatevers, either books or videos or whatever it is about playing the London, a lot of times people will suggest not taking on d6 because you're developing the queen. And quite honestly, I mean, in so many lines, like when you check with the computer, these same variations that humans will tell you not to take on d6, computers, it's almost always the computer's top choice. And my takeaway there is, from a human perspective, maybe it's easier to play other things, although in this particular structure, with my h-pawn having been moved, the stereotypical thing is to retreat. But I don't want to do that here because then I would be forced, to capture with my f-pawn if they captured the bishop on g3. So I don't want to do that here, but yeah, in a lot of cases, this is not as bad as I think some people will lead you to believe, like some humans will lead you to believe. So yeah, interesting little nugget there. So queen takes d6, and then just normal sort of developing in the London. And this, so computer evaluates this as an inaccuracy. I really think there are some other moves that are technically worse later in the game in terms of how they changed the evaluation, that they were sort of more severe mistakes or whatever it is on my part. But I really think this move is probably the move that I'm least proud of in this game. And the reason is just conceptual, easy to understand conceptually. I've already moved this pawn here. Where's my king gonna go, right? My king's gonna feel unsafe over on the queen side, and my king's going to feel unsafe over here with these pawns just, you know, being too far advanced. What was I thinking here? I think I was just focusing on, going to get the bishop, and thinking, you know, hey, I'll just get some play over here, and I'll castle queenside and just go for some kind of kingside attack or something. It was not very well thought out on my part, and yeah, this move led to king safety issues for me, which led to other issues. And so as a result, because king safety, especially in the opening, in the early and in the middle game, should be a top priority for us, I mean, yeah, I don't know why I'm making moves like this. I've got way more than enough experience to see that this is just not practically advisable. I mean, we have these ideas when we get a little bit more advanced in chess that, hey, we can just do things like put our king on f1 if we're getting in a dicey scenario. We know that, hey, I've played positions before where I don't have to castle. And yeah, you shouldn't talk yourself out of castling, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or you shouldn't talk yourself out of the general principle of keeping your king safe early in the game. And this move really exemplifies that, and we'll sort of see how that comes out later in the game. So bishop g6, and then I jump my knight in. And this isn't a case where I was like, hey, I don't have to take right away, um, because um, their bishop is just kind of being held hostage. So that was my thinking for a while, and that's important to keep in mind here over the next few moves. So they go a6. I just look to stop this b5 idea, and once again, I'm just like not paying attention to king safety issues. I guess I'm vaguely thinking, hey, my king might end up on f1. Yeah, not so good there. And they go e5, and when I saw this move, initially it looks a little scary with my king in the middle, but then I was like, this is going to create pawn weaknesses for them, especially the d5 pawn, and that'll potentially give me something to play against. So I was actually kind of, excited to see this move, although the engine likes it. I thought it was worse than the engine actually thinks it is. So d takes, knight takes. And then I made this move queen b3. And this is a case of not paying attention to what I would call little tactics. So I think I was trying to move somewhat quickly here. And I just saw this idea of, hey, you go here. This is going to gain a tempo. They've got to do something about it. And that's essentially all the thought process I think I had. Not taking into account the thing that occurs to someone who thinks about this for more than the 5 seconds that I just mentioned, which is that if I take on b2, on b7, they've got rook b8 coming back here, and so I'm not really making a threat with my queen on b3. And yeah, I mean, I had a rude awakening on their next move, right? So knight d3, and this move was, of course, really annoying because I don't want to give up my bishop, especially when I'm supposedly holding this bishop hostage. Yeah. So yeah, this is just not good for white. So I don't want to take here, so I end up playing king f1, but it turns out taking here, of course, is the best move, and it's the best move in a bad position, which is why I didn't want to do it. And so you get a line, something like this. And yeah, when the best move is like for this queen trade to occur, leaving white with these, isolated rook spawns, that's just a bad position. And black is like -1.5 or something here. And yeah, this is just not good. So instead I went king f1, and they jump back, hitting my bishop. So I take their bishop, and I try to set up some discoveries on their king, which of course they castle in response to. And I just figured my bishop's going to be lost. What piece is going to give me the best sort of furtherance of my position? They take on e2, which computer does not like. Computer wants to do something like this instead. And this is just not good for white. White's king is totally exposed. Black's pieces are way better. This rook is awful compared to this rook, and this knight is fantastic. So yeah, that would have been better for black than trading off their nicely advanced knight, even though they get this tempo on my rook. And yeah, at about this point, I thought I had dodged bullets, because I can start putting pressure here, and I have something to go after. So after a while, a sequence of 5 to 8 moves there, feeling like I had a bad position, I thought I was coming out of it a bit here. Although the issue is, of course, this knight is taking away my king's squares. If I could ever get my king over here, to try to get my rook some freedom. The queen is on that square. And yeah, this rook needs to get out, and I don't really have a good way to challenge this knight. So even though I started feeling a little bit better at this point, this is still a pretty bad position for white, objectively speaking, despite the fact that black has this weakness here. In fact, this is something like -2.5 for black. Black should definitely be winning this position. So they go rook f8, fe8, and I go knight h4. Computer likes queen d1 a little bit better, I guess, with the idea of just, I mean, we already have pressure on d4, but just sort of allowing more mobility with the pawns over here. But yeah, I went knight h4, trying to come in here. I think I also considered knight e1 just to come this way. But I liked this move to come over here because it also, what the other component of it was just to try to challenge the knight on g2. But I didn't really get a chance to do that, at least immediately in the way that I thought, because here, of course, they're threatening mates, so I've got to respond to that. Queen d1, and they come in here, threaten the rook over here in the corner. Just so many moves they have here to just gain tempo. Yeah, this is just a really bad position for white. F3. Computer says this is, I don't know why it calls this inaccurate. It's actually one of the top engine moves. So yeah, that's just a little odd. And then we were in somewhat of time trouble at this point. Each of us, I don't remember exactly, but there was some kind of time trouble. Yeah, I think my opponent had a lot less time than I had. Maybe they had a minute or two at this point, even though we're on move 24. And they played this move, queen e3. And initially I wasn't seeing that, you know, after this, with the fork, they don't have this, of course, because my queen is on this, but I wasn't seeing in my calculations initially that my queen was also defending here. I was just focused on the idea that, hey, my knight is defending this, so if I go here to fork these two guys, this is no longer going to have a defender. And so after I realized that, you know, my queen was defending this, I felt great about my position, and turns out I had good reason for the first time in about 10 moves at least to feel decently okay about my position, because after knight g2, this is pretty equal. And actually at this point, I started to feel not even decent about my position. I thought I had serious winning chances because of the weak d5 pawn, not to mention the fact that my opponent was in like serious time trouble, as I said. So I was thinking there would be some kind of possible further blunder they might make or something of that nature. So rook f1 here, and the idea here was to just try to play this kind of setup, trade off a pair of rooks, that kind of idea. Of course, I can't just go here because I only have one defender of the square and they have two attackers. But yeah, that was the thinking. So they retreat, getting out of the way. And I start to try to amass some pressure against d5. And at this point, yeah, I mean, given my opponent's time situation, you know, I thought I had serious winning chances. And yeah, I was feeling good about things. So they get some breathing room for their king, and I just continue to pile up. And here they made a nice move, I thought, a nice sort of defensive idea, which is that this pawn is probably going to be lost, but why not just come down here and get some counterplay? And here, yeah, I started thinking more and more about like how good of winning chances I had, and it's a great practical example of just not taking the time to see your opponent's threats. Turns out I've got to be careful of this square and this square as infiltration points for black here, and I was not thinking about that at all. This square, we'll see in a bit that their queen can take up residence here, and this square immediately threatened by the rook coming in. I was just focusing on taking this pawn in my calculations, and I was not even considering these infiltration points. So yeah, good practical kind of advice there. It's you can never stop thinking about your opponent's threats. And the takeaway here is, like, I thought I was pretty easily winning in this position. I think if I was made to give like a computer evaluation, I would probably guess that the computer was saying this was like +2, +2.5 or something for white. But it turns out, because of these infiltration point ideas, this gives black sufficient counterplay that, yeah, despite this issue with the pawn, black is doing fine, and this is like objectively equal, actually, this position. And because I was so sort of caught up in my own ideas, I just focused on that and was like, hey, I can add another attacker because this is pinned. They can't capture on c4. And yeah, when they came with the rook, I was like, uh-oh. Didn't end up thinking enough about it, and I played this move, queen c2. Again, not appreciating this is an infiltration point where there would be mate threatened on g1. So instead, I needed to play this, defending against the queen coming in here. Yeah, really odd. No, I'm not sure at all why I was not aware of these threats. But yeah, the queen did come in, and of course the threat here is to play mates. So the only practical thing that I was seeing to get out of it is what I played, king g3. And as I said, opponents in time trouble here. I actually took some time here myself, I think, because each move you get 45 seconds added to it. I think my opponent was pretty close to hitting, to flagging on most of these moves, but they kept getting 45 seconds added. And I took a couple minutes. I was trying to figure out if I could go over here or if I can move my f-pawn, but the short story is I'm getting mated if I do either of those things. So especially if I go f3, just as an example line, if I go f3, like this is horrible for white. So king h4, g5, f takes, h takes, king h5, takes h3, and yeah, takes g5, f6 check. This is just horrible. This is mate in 3 from this position. So yeah, I can't move the f pawn. Sorry. So yeah, instead of moving the f-pawn, which seemed to be my only other option here, I just went back, and we had this repetition, and yeah, I thought this was all black had, was this repetition, but turns out they had one move, which, to be fair, it's hard to see, especially if you're in time trouble, but this move, rook e8, was, that's a really hard move to see, but this move would have been winning for black. So as an example line, we would get something like this. They have to do a rook sacrifice, which of course makes it very difficult, just so their queen can infiltrate. You get something like this, and the queen starts mopping up all these pawns, gonna take on gonna trade this guy off next, and then take the, well, not take that, but yeah, this is just yeah, this is not good for white. Black has got, what is this? Maybe three extra pawns for black. So a queen and 3 pawns against 2 rooks, basically. But yeah, that's a tough move to see in time pressure. So thanks to my opponent's time pressure and a couple of mistakes on their part, we got this draw by repetition. My opponent probably deserved to win the game, but it's a good example of, like, this game is a good example of a number of things. First, you can never get so advanced in chess that king safety becomes unimportant, to where moves like, where's it at? Moves like g4 here can just be flippantly thrown out there without addressing the issue of where your king is going to go. So I think that's the first big takeaway. But the second big takeaway is, to me, you get in a difficult position, you got to keep fighting. You never know what can happen. Your opponents are human beings too, and this is something I'm trying to personally appreciate more and more. Is, you know, if I get in a bad position, I'll oftentimes almost just give up, if not actually give up by resigning, just psychologically give up, where I stop fighting. Your opponents are humans, and you know they're going to make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, you get what we saw in this game, where, you know, I had a bad position for most of the game and was able to claw back to a drawn position, and then I was able, because my opponent burned so much of their time, to get into a position where they should have been winning, but still I was able to pull out a draw by repetition, basically because of practical considerations like time trouble. So yeah, I mean, I hope you guys got something out of that. I thought it was a really interesting game. You know, even if it wasn't something I won, I thought there was interesting takeaways, things of that nature. But yeah, I hope you guys got something out of it, and looking to be up here again soon with another game analysis video. Until then, have a good one. Thanks a lot.